Hello everybody, it's Anna here today with a little bit of Welsh history. Now here today we are at, also we may do some Welsh language a bit later on if we've got time, but we're here at the ruined remains of LLYS EURYN. And LLYS EURYN, the ruins sit upon a wooded shoulder of Bryn Eirin, which is a limestone hill on the outskirts of RHOS on Sea in North Wales. Now, as you can see, three sides of the building remain, with the remains of interior walls, a complete fireplace and a chimney stack rising to about 50 feet, two other fireplaces and windows. But more than anything else, its history makes this one of the more intriguing and important historical buildings in North Wales. Now this building, LLYS EURYN, was one of the local estates in the DESCENDANT area owned and occupied by EDNYFED FYCHAN, full name EDNYFED FYCHAN ap Gwyneddd, who was serving Llywelyn the Great and his son DAFYDD AP LLYWELYN. He was the ancestor of Owen Tudor and thereby of the Tudor dynasty. It is thought that this house was burnt in 1409 during the revolt of MAELGWN HIR and restored or rebuilt shortly afterwards. The present structure is late medieval and may be the house occupied by the Conwy family until 1629, when it was sold to Sir Peter Mutton. During the working life, end of the 19th century, of the nearby limestone quarry, a small hut was built against one of the walls, which was believed to house the blasting materials. Anyway, we want some earlier history than that, so let's proceed to that. Now, this site is of greater importance than these ruins. The house was formerly called LLYS MAELGWN GWYNEDD, who had a palace on this spot in the 6th century. Nothing more is heard of LLYS EURYN after association in the early 13th century with EDNYFED FYCHAN, until there is a reference to its having been burnt in 1409 by MAELGWN HIR, like I mentioned earlier. How much of the existing shell represents EDNYFED's abode is controversial. Experts consider that his clays would have been of timber construction on a stone foundation. The portion that remains shows that the building was erected in turbulent times. No window is to be traced, only narrow slits, and the sole doorway is a postern on the north. Excavations under the west wall revealed a foundation of rough boulders, and mounds in the turf indicate that a considerably larger area was once covered by buildings. This monument is of national importance for its potential to enhance our knowledge of medieval settlement and building techniques. It retains significant archaeological potential, with a strong probability of the presence of associated archaeological features and deposits. The structure itself may be expected to contain archaeological information concerning chronology and building techniques, and the scheduled area here comprises the remains described and areas around them within which related evidence may be expected to survive. So this old house of EDNYFED FYCHAN who was a descendant of the tribal rulers of the area and is a fairly well-known character in Welsh history. But the castle that he was supposed to have had is a mystery, having seemingly disappeared without trace. But he's a fascinating character because he rose to become the chief advisor of Prince Llywelyn ap Iorwerth, and as such he was the second most powerful man in Wales during the early part of the 13th century, and he bought the land of RHOS FYCHAN, which means little more, from Llywelyn and established his manor there around the year 1240. And this is built on what's now the Bryn Eirin Nature Reserve, and it's a lovely place to come. But Ednwyfed is known to have had a private chapel at the foot of Bryn Eirin, which is the foot of this nature reserve, part of which still exists as the north wall in the local church of St Trillo, and his manor was said to be close by. At that time in Wales, manors were not the large country houses that now grace the land. They had to be defensible against hostile neighbours, and so they were often small castles, as can be seen at the later manorial site of MAELGWN HIR at Sycharth. So there we have the old house of Ednwyfed FYCHAN, who rose to be the chief advisor to Prince Llywelyn ap Iorwerth, and as such being the most powerful man in Wales during the early part of the 13th century. So we'll leave it there for today. Thought you'd like to see that and know the history. And don't forget, Ednwyfed was a descendant of the tribal rulers of the area and is fairly well known in Welsh history. Fairly well known, I should say, in Welsh history. So we'll leave it there for today, and we'll say ta-ta for now, and we'll see you on the next adventure or the next Welsh lesson. Don't forget to keep practicing, because practice makes perfect. Ta-ta for now. Nos da.